Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Sigma Virtual Hour. I am your host, Brother Kevon Easley, and tonight we have some special guests with us to talk about a subject that many of us have been impacted by, many of us can relate to, and that is the subject of diabetes. We are just blessed to have two local community members with us. We are here with Dr. Parson and we are here with Miss McMillan, who works for EVMS, and they're just going to talk to us and introduce us tonight to what diabetes is. So without further ado, Dr. Parsons and Miss McMillan, if you don't mind, can you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you got into diabetic education, your work that you're doing at EVMS, and then we'll roll right into our presentation that you both have prepared for us tonight. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. So my name is Omri Parson. I am Associate Professor at EVMS and Director of Clinical Research. I've been here for 23 years for doing clinical research on diabetes, diabetic neuropathy, all of the complications that come from diabetes. So it is a pleasure being here with you. We actually educate the participants. So whoever comes to participate in our studies, one of our hallmarks is education. We like to spend time with you, making sure that you understand every aspect of the study, but also we educate you about your health. And we do lots of community screenings. We're out in the community, oftentimes actually performing hemoglobin A1C testing, which Abby will talk to you about further, as well as blood pressure testing. So without further ado, I will give you Abby, that is our presenter for the evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parson, and thank you to Pi Beta Sigmas tonight for allowing us to come out here and present to you all. As mentioned, again, my name is Abby McMillan, and I am a researcher, health educator with the Diabetes Center with EVMS. And tonight I'm going to provide you all with some basic education on diabetes, risk factors, symptoms, what it is. So let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to share my presentation with you all, and I hope that you guys can see it clearly. Give me one moment here. All right. So here is my presentation. I think it is showing pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my side panel. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the basics of diabetes, the types of diabetes, blood glucose, which is blood sugar, what HbA1c is, standing for hemoglobin A1c. We're going to talk about insulin, signs and symptoms of diabetes, risk factors, and prevention methods. And we're also going to take this opportunity to give you guys some information about the current research and studies we have going on at the center. And the center is the Strelitz Diabetes Center. Basically, this is a place that treats diabetes and other metabolic disorders. We have a lot of different research programs going on, and that include different various aspects of diabetes and metabolic issues. And we try to stay active, like Dr. Parson mentioned, in the community and helping build that awareness for diabetes. So before I start talking to you all about diabetes, education, and all the things along, I want to take this opportunity to share with you guys these great studies we have going on at the center. This is a great opportunity for the community to learn more about their lifestyles, their nutrition, and how it can affect your risks for developing diabetes. We have this one. It is a nutrition-based lifestyle intervention, and it's looking for people who are African American, ages 25 to 55, who are just having a difficult time maintaining the healthy weight they want to stay at, who might be at higher risk for diabetes, who might already have prediabetes. And the goal of the study is to determine if this personal nutrition program that we are developing can help people eat healthier without giving up all those favorite flavors and seasonings and spices that the culture and culture cuisines and cooking have. And so if you're qualified and you're able to join this great opportunity, you get compensated to participate. We have free wellness checks, healthy eating tips. We have free cooking demos and lessons. You also get a free cloud-based weight scale and blood pressure monitor. And we are really looking for African American men who are wanting to, make that lifestyle change and be a part of a program like this. So whoever you know who'd be interested, if you're interested, tell your friends, your family, your brothers, your uncles, your aunts, your fathers, spread the word. It's a great opportunity for the community to learn more about lifestyle-based interventions. The second study I want to kind of review with you all is called Pathfinder 2. It is sponsored by Grail Pharmaceuticals, and it's to help improve early cancer detection. So this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with diabetes, but it does have a lot to do with prevention and taking healthy measures. So this study is basically going to look at the performance of what's called a multi-cancer early detection test, which is also known as an MCED test. It is called Gallery, and it can detect up to 50 biomarkers of cancer or abnormal cells in your blood by one blood draw. And not only can it detect if you have cancer, it can also look at the location. So another really great opportunity to stay on top of your health and to kind of take those preventative measures. I'm going to move on to just a few of our clinical trials. And then I'm going to give you the opportunity to check out our website and interest form for these studies before I get into the presentation. So here on the right, we have a clinical research study that is actually for people who do have diabetes. So whereas the lifestyle intervention, you might be like, oh, I want to do this, but I already have diabetes. Well, we do have an opportunity for you all too. So this is looking at an investigational drug for people who have type 2 diabetes that might have excess weight and higher risk for heart disease. We also have an investigational drug looking at uncontrolled high blood pressure. So that middle one there is called advanced hypertension. It is a study looking at a drug for uncontrolled high blood pressure. And then the last clinical study I wanted to mention is the Nevro-HFX study, and that's looking at a treatment for painful diabetic neuropathy. So I am going to leave it here on this screen for just a few moments for you all to be able to kind of scan these QR codes. The one on the right, and if you are on a tablet or a phone already and you can't very well scan these, there are the website URLs listed below each QR code. So again, the one on the right is our website. It shows all of the things that we're doing in research and in the community. And then the one on the left, excuse me, I had those backwards, but the one on the right says research interest form. That one is going to be a place for you to sign up if you're interested in any of those studies I just mentioned. And I will put this back up at the end as well. So I'll leave it there for just a few moments. Make sure. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about diabetes. It's so important. So I'm going to go ahead and start with diabetes, it is an epidemic. And just as we call hypertension or high blood pressure, that can be a silent killer, but so can diabetes. And 1 in 5 people in the US are diagnosed, about 38 million Americans. And of those who are diagnosed, about 33% don't even know. So a third of people, they don't even know they have it. And compared to non-Hispanic whites, Blacks and Hispanics are 50% more likely to be diagnosed. Native Americans, twice as likely. Asian Americans are 25% more likely to be diagnosed. So what happens before you develop diabetes? Well, there is a thing called pre-diabetes. And this is when your blood sugar, your blood glucose levels are raising, but they're not yet high enough to determine diabetes. And so an HbA1c range, which I will discuss a little further later on, for prediabetes is 5.7% to 6.4%. And more than 1 in 3 people in the US have prediabetes, and of those, more than 80% don't know it. So again, it's so important to stay on top of following your risks, understanding your risk, and seeing your provider. All right. So in the most basic form, basic terms we can start with, diabetes mellitus is a problem with your body that causes irregular or high blood glucose levels or blood sugar. And I typed diabetes mellitus because there are technically 2 types. There is diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus. Insipidus has nothing to do with what we are talking about today or the typical diabetes you hear on the daily. So diabetes mellitus has typically 3 types, is type 1, type 2, and gestational. And we will be reviewing those 3 types today. Another note is the HbA1c range for a diabetes diagnosis is equal to or greater to 6.5%. I'm going to leave this up for a moment as well. There is a website URL right there at the bottom. It says www.diabetes.org backslash risk test. So that is diabetes.org /risk test. This will give you guys a chance to kind of look at your risks for developing type 2 diabetes in under 60 seconds, and it is provided by the American Diabetes Association. All right. So people might have heard the phrase, I'm looking at my sugar today, or my sugar's high. Well, what they're talking about is blood glucose or blood sugar. Blood sugar tests measure the amount of sugar called glucose in your blood. Glucose comes from carbohydrates, and it's the main source of energy used by your body. Insulin, which I'm going to go into detail later, is a hormone that's produced in the pancreas, and it helps your body's cells to use the glucose you eat. Normally, your blood glucose levels increase slightly after you eat, and this increase causes your pancreas to release insulin, and then your blood glucose levels will not get too high, they will level out. Blood glucose levels that remain high over time and uncontrolled diabetes can lead to damage in your eyes, your kidneys, your nerves, heart, and blood vessels. So some people get HbA1c and blood sugar tests mixed up. Well, HbA1c, that stands for hemoglobin A1c. And instead of a blood sugar test where it's looking at your sugar at the time of that test, the HbA1c test shows your average level of blood sugar over the past 3 months. People with diabetes need to have this test done regularly, suggested every 3 months, to see whether their blood sugar levels have been staying within that range that they're aiming for. And this test is also used to diagnose diabetes. So when myself and my team members are out in the community, we use this HbA1c test to give you guys a determination of where you are, if you're normal, prediabetes, or diabetic range. It takes like 5 minutes, so it's really cool. It's very fast. And to the left, you can see that chart. I have normal, prediabetes, and diabetes ranges there to kind of give a visual of what we're going for HbA1c levels. All right. So I told you guys we were going to come back to this topic. I'm not going to go too far into detail, but what is insulin? Again, it is a hormone made by the pancreas that helps take sugar from the blood to put into a cell. And this helps that cell use the sugar as fuel and energy. There is a thing called insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity, and that's when the cell refuses to let that insulin bring that sugar into it. This happens when the cell cannot use the sugar or if there's not enough room in the cell. So this will typically happen when you're pre-diabetic or when you're about to become pre-diabetic, and this ends up leading to not being able to control those sugar levels and leads to diabetes. All right. So the types of diabetes. There are three main types that we're going to kind of review today, and the two main that you all probably have heard of is type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is thought mainly to be caused by an autoimmune issue. The body kind of hurts itself or attacks itself by mistake. And for this type is little to no insulin production. People are typically thinner, and of these with diabetes, but only about 5% have type 1. Though this can be diagnosed at any time in life, it's typically diagnosed when you're younger and youths. And usually there's a sudden onset of symptoms. The main treatment for type 1 is going to be on insulin therapy and also lifestyle changes. So type 2 is much more prevalent. There's much higher rates of type 2 than type 1, especially in the US. Of people who have diabetes, there's 90 to 95% of people have type 2. Typically, people with diabetes type 2, are overweight, obese. There's little insulin production and insulin resistance. And basically, the body just doesn't use the insulin well. They can't keep the blood glucose at normal levels. This can gradually develop over many years. It's usually diagnosed in in adults. And the main treatment is lifestyle changes. You can take pills. I'm sure you guys know the injections, which we will go into the next workshop, and insulin therapy. All right, so let's go over some signs and symptoms. It's so important to be kind of aware of your body. So some of the signs that you can experience if you're developing diabetes is frequent urination, increased thirst, feeling hungry all the time, dehydration, feeling weak, or an unusual sudden weight loss, which is very typical with type 1. And some symptoms include frequent infections, slow healing cuts or wounds. You might have some tingling, prickling, and numbness in your peripheral body, so like your hands and your feet. You feel tired and fatigued all the time. You might notice some dry or itchy skin, and you might even notice blurred vision. These are the main signs and symptoms for diabetes. So going to those risk factors, so how do we know if we're more at risk for developing? And then we're going to talk about how do we prevent this, okay? So type 1, family history is one of the top risk factors to develop type 1 diabetes. Again, I mentioned this earlier, you can get diabetes at any age, but it is more common in children, teens, and youth. And in the US, white people are more likely to develop type 1 diabetes than African American, Hispanic, or Latina people. With type 2, so obviously you're going to be at higher risk if you already have prediabetes because you're kind of getting to that level that, again, is putting you at higher risk for developing diabetes. If you're overweight, have a hard time controlling your weight, or obese, you are at high risk. Being 45 years or older, if you have a family history of type 2 diabetes, if you're not really getting a lot of exercise in through the week, so if you're exercising less than 3 times a week, you can be at higher risk, and history of gestational diabetes. And I didn't go further detail for gestational diabetes, but I do want to mention it here. So what that is when if you develop diabetes while you're pregnant, and I have some notes here, it increases your risk for type 2 later in life. So mentioned here, and if you have a baby over 9 pounds, that can also increase your risk. And gestational diabetes often goes away after your baby's born, but your baby is going to be a little bit more likely to develop type 2 later. And then we mentioned race and ethnicity. So African American, Hispanic, Latino, American Indian, Alaskan Native people, and some Pacific Islanders and Asians are higher risk. And then if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you may also be at higher risk. So it's always important to, be aware of your risks here. So I want to move on to prevention, and that's going to kind of wrap us back around to the study program we have going on. Lifestyle changes, lifestyle, lifestyle, lifestyle. We can't say it enough. I know you hear it all the time. It's not always easy, but small changes can truly, truly make a difference in preventing diabetes. So losing even a small amount of weight, just being a little more active, managing your diet, nutrition, reversing your prediabetes. And before I move on to that lifestyle change program, I also think it's so important to have a community, a team, people around you who can help support you. The partnership is so important to make those lifestyle changes. So having people you trust, people you can go to keep you accountable and for you to keep them accountable is so important for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And there's also a program called the National Diabetes Prevention Program. It is provided by the Center for Disease and Prevention, and that can assist in lifestyle changes also. Oh, there's some little images I forgot. Love those ones. So before we move on to questions and answers, I always, I love referring back to this quote here from Buddha. Health is the greatest gift, contentment, the greatest wealth, faithfulness, the best relationship. I just really love that one. Kind of wanted to end on kind of a high note there. And I'm going to refer back here to reiterate about these programs we have going on. And I'll go back to those QR codes. All right, so you guys can look at those. And that lifestyle program, again, it is available. We are currently enrolling. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing these questions. And I hope you all have enjoyed this presentation today. Thank you, Pi Beta Sigma, for having us. And I look forward to the next 2 workshops.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. The brothers over at Phi Beta Sigma, we definitely do appreciate you and Dr. Parsons being here with us. We do have some questions for you all. Okay, and as we thought through the questions and everything, we wanted to make sure that our questions were relative, but also we wanted to make sure that they took into account the community. So earlier in the presentation, you had mentioned a location. You said that you all were located at the Strout Center. Is that correct?
The Strelitz Diabetes Center.
Okay,
It's
what's that location?
Sure. It is off Brambleton Avenue. It's across Brambleton Avenue, so opposite side of Brambleton from the Norfolk General Hospital. It's next to the health department, the big Fort Norfolk Plaza Tower, if that gives a good reference. And yeah.
All right, yeah, it definitely does. Because we want to make sure that our audience has an opportunity to know that there is help in their own backyard. And I don't think a lot of people realize how close they are to receiving some of the interventions that many people need that have been diagnosed or may have diabetes, whichever type, but have yet to be diagnosed. We do have a question from our Facebook audience, and they want to know, is type 2 diabetes reversible?
So I do have an answer for that, and I think Dr. Parson might have a good way of explaining it as well. The best way I can put it is I don't like using the term reversible for type 2 diabetes. And again, Dr. Parson might have a different view, but reversible, I would rather use the word remission or controlled, because you can get your A1C and your sugars controlled. And I have seen some people get them down to a very normal range. And in that way, you could consider it reversible. But again, I think the better way to put it is to be kind of in a remission or controlled state of diabetes. Dr. Parson, I'll let you speak on that if you have anything to add.
So the real answer is no. So once your body has experienced that level of or once you have stepped over and you become diabetic, basically your body is having a hard time processing that glucose. So when we say, I like to say you can control it with lifestyle. So there are a ton of medications out there for diabetes, and those medications can, decrease your levels so that they're just about normal. But the goal really is to control your diabetes with diet and lifestyle. So therefore, the goal is to get you off all of those medications, exercise. Lots of times this comes with weight loss, eating healthy, changing your diet, and then you can control it without those medications. So if we were going to accept quote unquote remission, that's what we would say. But the likelihood that you could develop it again, and then as you get older, if you're unable to manage your blood sugars, then that's why we don't say remission per se. But it can definitely be controlled just with lifestyle. So you can eliminate, with proper, I don't want to give out medical information, but if you were even going to try to do this, you have to do it in a very slow manner with your physician on board to make sure that you're doing it in a healthy way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I understand that those two terms are very important, reversible versus remission. I understand that. And I got a question on behalf of the community. So in Hampton Roads, we have a lot of different populations. And so this question is more along the lines for low socioeconomic impacted individuals or family. So are there any programs that you all know of for someone who may be dealing with prediabetes or have the diagnosis of being a diabetic, but they don't have the income to support what they need to do in terms of their therapy?
Dr. Parson, I think would be really great at answering this question. I have some things in mind, but she's very well versed. So Dr. Parson.
No, so I will say, the first thing is that, and I think you touch upon a lot of things. So when I think about managing diabetes, it's not only that you need the health care, so you need a physician to, help you manage it. You need to medications. So here Centera has the ACC clinic, so the ambulatory care center, where they see patients on an outpatient basis. If they don't have insurance. So there's a number of community health centers in Hampton Roads. I know of a couple in Norfolk where you can go to get diabetes care. In addition to receiving care from a physician, you can also get the medication. So if you don't have the money to afford the medications, there is one medication, I don't know if you've heard it, it's called metformin. It's been used a lot. So it's been around for a very long time. So that medication is relatively inexpensive. Now, if you are looking for the, injectables and some, more expensive medications that are just hit the market, those ones you hear the commercials for, those may be a little bit harder to get as far as being able to afford it. But there are health clinics. The public health building that is right next to us is a great resource for just seeking basic care. The only other thing that I'll add is that diabetes really is about lifestyle, and I can't reiterate that enough. So aside from just going to the doctor and getting your medications, being able to buy the proper foods is also very important. And I know that in Norfolk, we have some food deserts, where they don't have good food choices. And we all know food has increased in price a lot. It costs a lot of money, and especially to eat healthy. So there are a number of programs from the food bank, which Abby can talk to you about, resources that, and I know, one of your brothers, goes around on Saturday and he hands out fresh food to individuals. So just tapping into those community resources for healthcare, for your medication, as well as food, I think is a good start for those people who are in need.
Absolutely. I'd love to expand on those resources, Dr. Parson. And like she mentioned, there is the Food Bank of Southeastern Virginia and Eastern Shore. There is one located Norfolk off of Virginia Beach Boulevard, and I believe it's Tidewater or Church. And then there's also the Free Hopes Clinic that is within EVMS as well, that provides free medical care for those who are in need. And great points there with medication. You know, metformin has been used for so many years, and so that is also pretty easily accessible drug. And yeah, so those are two options I'd love to put out there.
Wow. So what I hear you both saying is when it comes to diabetes, don't forget about the lifestyle change. And that is just as important as the insulin base or the injectables or the oral therapy that one may be subscribed to.
That's correct. And you know, we have a couple of lifestyle studies here. And I just want to reiterate a lot of times, and we are going to talk about this during our nutrition session, you can prevent diabetes with the lifestyle change. So even if you see yourself trending that way, if your doctor has said, hey, you have pre-diabetes, if you don't, you know, decrease your weight or, you know, stop eating so many simple sugars, so then you may be predisposed, especially if you have a family history, then we really need to be mindful and careful. And we're going to come back and talk about nutrition. We're going to have a whole segment based on nutrition and what are the good things to eat and maybe not so good things to eat. But lifestyle is super, super important in your health overall.
Absolutely. And that's going to end up being our key word for tonight, lifestyle, and just getting that in our audience minds. That way the pump has already been primed for the next workshops. So this next question that I have is going to be on behalf of parents, in particularly new parents. So how would you advise a new parent who has a infant that is entering into a new stage of their development and they're bedwetting? If bedwetting is one of the symptoms, then what would you advise in terms of that parent that may be concerned? Well, hey, I have a family history. My child is bedwetting. I can't get him or her to stop. What's my next steps?
So as a mother of three, I will tell you there is a whole lot that goes into bedwetting. And so you sort of have to process of elimination. I think if it's a concern where it might be, you know, related to diabetes or another chronic disease, the first thing to do is have them checked out by their pediatrician. So they will take blood work. They will determine whether their blood sugar is normal, whether their pancreas, which produces our insulin, whether that's normal. And so they'll give you a ton of blood tests in order to figure out what's going on. But as Abby said, bedwetting may be just one thing, but you know, excessive thirst. I mean, there is a lot of symptoms that go on with it. So with our kids, we sort of have to, you know, play detective a little bit, and try to put all the pieces together and formulate, or, you know, just put it together and see what's going on. But that's where your pediatrician is going to be a great source. I will say that I have two sons, and they were a little bit slow when it came to bedwetting because they just didn't want to wake up. So they were fine otherwise, but you know, sometimes it's a little tough. But they both got it, so they're good.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I as we ask the questions, I would be remiss. That's my new word, remission. I like how that sounds. I would be remiss if we did not put the ball back in the court so that we can understand what our medical care providers do beyond the typical understanding that we get from maybe the general hospital show, because we always see the medical provider doing something with the patient in the waiting room. So this next question, I think, may help expose the work that you all do that we don't see. So the question is, what is a clinical trial? How is it important? Well, what's important about it? And can it impact medical policy reform?
So a clinical trial or clinical study, so there are many types of clinical trials, many types of clinical studies. Some are as simple as just taking a survey, so just answering questions. Others have an intervention where you might take a drug, and then they will be a quote unquote placebo. So there will be a control, and there will be an intervention, and then they compare the two. Every single drug that we have on the market has been tested in someone. And I know sometimes people think, okay, clinical trials, we have to be guinea pigs, quote, some people say that, but really you're testing out a new drug, you're testing out a new process, you're testing out something. So you're proving things. I also like to tell people, when you get a new drug and you go to the drugstore and they give you a whole big pamphlet, side effects, you read all the things that it tells you about the drug. Well, they know that because somebody raised their hand and they participated in a clinical trial. So it's super important that we have diverse clinical trials. People of all ethnicities actually participate, and it gives a ton of information about that drug. There have been drugs that have been taken off the market altogether and been labeled toxic because they were just not good. So lots of times you have phases in clinical trials. Well, they might test it in the lab first. They might test it on animals. Whether that's good or bad, that's a whole nother discussion. And then they bring it and make sure that it's safe enough to test on people, but they want to know the side effects. So if it has bad effects on your heart or bad effects on your kidneys, you'll either have that disclaimer that if you have heart disease or kidney disease, do not take this drug. Well, those things were discovered when somebody participated in clinical trial or clinical study. So it's really to see whether those things work or they don't work, they're good or they're bad. And it's human participants who help prove that. So one of your questions was, can that direct policy? So the answer is yes. It certainly does say whether there is a drug that can be on the market or not. If it really has bad effects, pharmaceutical companies can't sell it. If there is a class action suit, we see those all the time. If you've been on this type of medication and you have long-term side effects of cancer or things like this, please call this lawyer. So they can sue. Those things can go, and if you are part of the government and the FDA, all of those things develop our food and drug policy. And they are influenced by our government, our local, state and federal government. So all of those things can go into there. It's information. And when that information is given to your senators and your congressmen, and when it goes to the FDA, it can absolutely affect policy, food policy, drug policy. And that happens all over the world, but especially here in the United States, especially if it has a bad effect. And I think I missed a question. What was your last question? You asked me 3.
That was it. You brought them on in.
Okay, right. So the only thing I'll say is that our participants, people who participate in studies, are our most valuable resource. We appreciate them a whole lot. What I will say is that we're able to spend more time with them than their physicians are. So your doctor might have 7 minutes. You come and you can spend several hours here with us, and we can answer all types of questions that you may have. Our physicians and our nurses that are here on staff spend just a long time with you in order for you to understand the study, but also to understand your health and what's going on with you. So I believe it's a win-win.
Thank you so much. In some of our previous discussions that we've had as a fraternity, we have started to understand that some of our males uh, may not know how to navigate their medical care. And so my question to you all is, if someone is concerned that they have diabetes or they want to find out, can they go directly to an endocrinologist off the street, or do they have to have a primary care physician? Is the primary care physician enough?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on their insurance as well. But Dr. Parson, you can probably also expand on that, I'm sure. But I do believe it's insurance based. If you can just go see an endocrinologist. What are your thoughts?
So first, an endocrinologist is someone who specializes in hormones, right? So they are going to, whether it's your thyroid hormone and your pancreas, insulin is a hormone. So that's what an endocrinologist does. So most of the time, they are a specialist. As we know in our healthcare system, lots of times you have to go to your PCP first to assess whether you or to figure out whether you have diabetes. And then if the PCP can't help you control it, it's not simple. They will send you to a specialist to help manage it better. Because there are times where your primary care physician, they don't know what's going on, or this drug is not you're not responding well to this drug and you're still having complications. And so they will refer you to someone who specializes specifically in diabetes, who knows all about the different types of drugs. You will maybe see a diabetes educator who there's classes. So lots of information. But I want to step back and say that, even though my light just went off, but even though the for your primary care physician, it's so important to have a good conversation with them. I like to tell patients, go to your doctor with your questions. Go to your doctor so you can talk about what it is, because a lot of times, we're rushing there. We have to go see the nurse. We have to go get weighed, and then we go here and there. And by the time the doctor comes in the room, we don't have the conversation we need to have. So come with maybe your questions written down. Make sure they're asked. If you have a system where you can send your questions ahead of time, over text or, to the doctor, hopefully they will be able to answer your questions because they are your first resource. And then most of the time, you then get sent to a specialist, such as an endocrinologist. That's typically how it goes. Now, if you have sort of a PPO, could you say, hey, I want to go see whoever I want to see? You could, but the endocrinologist might ask you, have you seen your PCP first? Because
Right.
they're your first go-to.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Parsons. So, Abby, I see you there, and I've got a question for you.
All right.
So, lifestyle, let's talk about it. Lifestyle has quite a few functionalities. So, this question is about how we handle ourselves on a Friday night. So, my folks that got diabetes, would you recommend some heavy drinking, or do you think that that's something that they should stay away from? Or, I mean, can they hit the bottom?
That's the hard part, right? Lifestyle. We also have to balance our quality of life too. So making sure you manage your stress, your quality of life is important. And sometimes for some people, drinking alcohol might be something they choose to do. As far as a medical or technical kind of recommendation, I am not here to say anything on that behalf. Um, Based on my basic education and knowledge, for what I would speak on is, drinking alcohol is not going to be the greatest thing to do if you have diabetes. It's mostly going to cause some sugar imbalances. It can also interfere with medications, so you just have to be careful. And I think that is going to be a better question. If you want to keep that question for next week too, I know Dr. Lee would be able to answer on that behalf, because there might be ways around it where every once in a while you can drink, a glass of wine, or every once in a while you can have that glass of beer. And I think it also depends a lot on the medications, again, you're taking. You also are pairing it maybe with a certain type of food. I will say, and this is kind of going aside from alcohol, but when you eat, let's say like an apple or a fruit, if you're going to eat that, especially as a diabetic, it's really important to actually pair that with a good healthy fat or protein. And that actually will help level out your sugar. It will help not raise it super quick and then go into a crash. And that's with anything. When you're eating some sort of sugar, it's great to pair, with the healthy fat or protein. And again, these are some great questions I think we can talk more about too in next week and the last week. Dr. Parson, do you have anything to add, regarding that question regarding alcohol?
So the and this is not to go into the nutrition side, because Abby is absolutely right. We are going to have a whole session based on nutrition. But I will say, if you look at a mixed drink that has some pineapple juice, some mango juice, and then it has a ton of sugar in it, and then you have a little bit of alcohol and you put it in it, that's probably going to take your blood sugar very, very high. It's going to take a lot of insulin for you to process that into your body. Now, if you take maybe one shot, it's very small, no fruit juice, it's not going to have as a bad of effect, or it's not going to send your insulin levels that high. So when we talk about nutrition, we are going to talk about, how you live with all of these lifestyle modifications that we need to do, because we have to live and you want to enjoy your life. And if you want to have some alcohol, or if you want to have, as Abby said, that glass of wine, they generally recommend red wine. And there's some red wines that are not sweet, so not Moscato, right? So we're not getting those sweet wines, but something that is going to, not take your blood sugar as high. And that's probably after eating a good balanced meal, as Abby also suggested. But not to get into that any further, we're going to have, we'll make sure that our nutritionist actually hits that point. Can you drink alcohol if you have diabetes?
Absolutely. Thank you. I gotta give them a little taste. I gotta let them know what we got planned for them. So last question. Okay. Last question. We talking about lifestyle management. Do you separate lifestyle management from weight management, or are they one in the same?
It's a loaded question. I think parts of them are separate, and I think parts of them are combined. Basically, lifestyle change, depending on your goals of lifestyle change, might incorporate weight loss or weight management. I think the best way, it's a bit of a loaded question. Dr. Parson, do you have anything to expand on that? Because basically I'd say they are correlated for sure, but again, it depends on your goals, if you're taking medications for weight loss versus lifestyle changes, etc. So
my personal opinion is that they are one and the same. They are not separated. Because think about it. If you are heavier and you change your diet and you start to lose weight, then you are, most of the time, you're going to be more active. You're going to have more energy. If you have knee troubles, if you have back troubles, they're going to get a little bit less, because your body is not carrying as much weight as it was. So
Right.
the more, the healthier you are, and healthy weight, if you lose weight to a healthy weight, because everybody's a little bit different, and I'm not going to say what weight you should be, but when you're in a good range, you feel good. I have oscillated in weight a little bit, and when I'm heavier, I'm slower. I don't feel like getting up, and so therefore I might not go out to that activity, or I might not take my kids out at all, because I'm tired. So our everything we eat is going to have an effect on our body, either good or not so good. Sometimes it's in the middle of the road, not bad or good. And really it's what you do on a consistent basis. So it's not the one time at the birthday party where you have a piece of cake that's going to do it. It's what you do every single day. Do you exercise every day? So I try to get up in the morning and exercise, but that starts my morning. My body is moving, I've stretched, I'm ready to go. And then, when I'm eating, what am I eating? Is it going to give me heartburn? Am I going to feel bad? I'm going to have to take, if I'm going to have to take something to fix that, because I know I wasn't supposed to eat that fried chicken because it just doesn't sit well with me, right? Or if you're lactose intolerant and you drink the milk and then you're in the bathroom, well, no, I can't come out. I can't go to that social event because now I'm in the bathroom. So all of that interplays and it goes directly into your lifestyle. And so I don't know whether people see food as, some people call it medicine. There are places where they have a food pharmacy that you eat, whatever you eat is going to help your conditions. If you Google any food, it will tell you all of the benefits, the properties, whether it's going to give you energy, whether it's going to make you tired. Chamomile tea helps you sleep. I mean, we have all of these natural foods and products that are at our disposal, and all of them have some type of an effect. And the thing is that we have to eat every day, every single day. So what we put in our bodies, I think has a direct result on our lifestyle and what we do. But that's my take. That's my opinion. And I say eat to live and not live to eat, so that's the goal.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely. I also want to add, kind of picking up where you said consistency, right, Dr. Parsons? So lifestyle and weight management is what kind of where we were going, right? So being consistent with those habits and goals, and this is not a plug in any sort of way. I'm reading the book Atomic Habits right now. And again, not a plug, it's just a great book. And I'm learning that being consistent with those goals really helps actually make those changes to your lifestyle. Whether it be exercising, eating, flossing your teeth, reading a book every day. If you get up or if you decide, okay, today I want to be able to work out or move my body every day for the next 7 days. If you get up and you do 2 push-ups or you walk down the street and back, if you do 1 push-up and that's it, that's something you did, you moved your body, you are getting yourself into a habit of moving your body. And eventually you can build on that and build on that. And then you're more active, you become a regular exerciser. Same thing with eating. Today, I'm going to have 1 fibrous vegetable. I'll have 1 bite of a cherry tomato, something like that, right? And eventually you're going to incorporate those healthier lifestyles and there will become habits over time.
I like it. I like it. So the next workshop is going to be diagnosis and monitoring. So just to get our audience ready for workshop 2, I'm going to ask each one of you to give us one thing that you want us to know tonight in case we have people that are watching tonight that cannot make it to workshop 2. There's one thing that you would want them to know about this subject that we're talking about in workshop 1. What would it be?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first, Dr. Burson.
Okay. So, first, I want to say, even before we go to workshop 2, type 2 diabetes is preventable. There is a whole lot that we can do so that we don't need the information in step 2. Lot that we can do, especially when we know that we have a predisposition for it, we can fight it. Now, even that said, there are some people that are going to go ahead and they are going to develop type 2 diabetes. But that said, it's very manageable. There has been such an evolution of drugs that are on the market that there is something for everyone. So if you have a good doctor and you're able to take the medicines on time, and you're able to make those lifestyle changes as we spoke before, then it is very manageable. You don't have to develop all of the complications that come along with it, such as ulcers, amputations, kidney failure, all of the complications that happen, because diabetes can affect every part of your body, every single part. And so the goal really is not to get diabetes, but if you do, there is so much information and so many medications and really good education out there so that you can manage it and still live a relatively healthy life. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. So if you have diabetes, do not despair. There is help, and there's still changes that you can make to have a great life.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Parsons. Abby?
Yeah, absolutely. And why I speak about the one thing I kind of want to leave everyone with, I'm going to share my screen one more time. These are the QR codes for the Diabetes Center website and the research interest form and website URLs. The one thing I want to leave everyone with, and again, so excited for the next 2 workshops, is everything Dr. Parsons said. On top of that, I mean, everything, so well said. I mean, that's so important. It's very preventable. But also I want to talk about the emotional side of diabetes just real quick and say, if you've been recently diagnosed, no one knows someone that's been recently diagnosed, it can be scary at first. And it can take a toll on your emotional well-being. And I think it's so important to know that there is a large community out there of people that can help, that can support. And just to always remember, have a team, reach out to your community, talk to people, be transparent. You're going to get through it. Again, it's a large community, and we're all in this together. And so I can kind of leave it at that. And yeah, again, looking forward so much to the next 2 workshops.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. McMillan and Dr. Parsons. To our audience, please make sure that you reach out to us and your point of contacts if you do have any questions, or you're trying to get in touch with Dr. Parsons or Ms. McMillan to get even more information. We do have a second workshop that is going to come up. Okay, we've got multiple workshops that are going to come up, in fact. And guys, I will tell you something, as a type 1 diabetic myself, this is a subject that you need to hear about. It is not something that we can understand in just one sitting. Okay, so for the next workshops, grab your family, make a phone call. You mean to tell me that 1 in 5, we got some folk in our family there that may be dealing with this. So grab them, call them, get them in tune with the good information that we are talking about. Dr. Parsons and Ms. McMillan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming over to Phi Beta Sigma and just giving us your best information. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody. To our audience, we bid you farewell, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everyone, and good night.